It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the SMU assistant women's soccer coach, Aubri Williamson. How are you doing today?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in college coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was growing up, the opportunity to continue to play wasn't as prominent as it is now. So, like 14, 15-year-old me, like I knew I loved the game and I didn't ever want to be away from it. But again, knowing that like professional opportunities weren't as prevalent, like I was trying to find different avenues to be able to stay in the game my whole life. And I think naturally coaching was it. Luckily, like the women's game has come around so far that there are so many more channels to play. But I think since the time I was 15, I knew I wanted to coach. I didn't know the timeline it was going to be within, but I knew long term I wanted to be a college coach and I wanted to make the impact that the coaches that I coached me made on me. I wanted to be able to give that back eventually. So it kind of was a pretty early decision.
What was your playing career like at FIT?
Yeah, so I had a really interesting playing career. I had 6 years of eligibility due to the fact that I had 3 knee surgeries. So I played my freshman year. I played my sophomore year, and my sophomore year was a pretty successful year. I was one of the top scorers in the nation at the Division II level. I came out with a ton of accolades. And then a couple months later, I tore my first ACL. So I sat out my junior year with a red shirt. My senior year, 3 games into the season, I tore my meniscus. So I sat out my senior year with a medical hardship. I played my first year of grad school. We had a great season. And then my last year of grad school, I torn my second ACL. So I technically only played 3 out of my 6 years. But like it sounds like rough, but I honestly learned some of the best lessons I could have possibly imagined out of those 6 years due to the injuries and the things I had to overcome. And I think it only made me a stronger coach now.
What was it like, obviously, with your injuries and not being able to play and then being able to play? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was tough, especially when you're, 18, 19 years old. You don't have the full big picture at that time in your life. So it was definitely tough because it was the first time I'd had the sport taken away from me. And the sport was like absolutely my identity. And, it was all I ever knew. So I had to learn how to be able to live day in and day out without having that be like my sole source of confidence. But I learned different ways on how to love the sport, how to be a better teammate, a ton of life lessons on like how to overcome adversity. But it made you appreciate the days that you could play and the years that you were healthy even more so. So like the days that we were running fitness and I didn't really want to run fitness, you learn to appreciate those days too.
What was your short time playing professionally like?
Yeah, it was a way different experience than playing in college. I played for a team called Enhevi in East Iceland. Iceland's amazing. It was beautiful. The scenery was amazing, but coming from Florida, it was quite cold. So that was an adjustment, learning how to play in the colds, learning how to play a little bit different style of play. But it was like a once in a lifetime opportunity that I would never trade for anything. But my teammates were great. The town that I lived in was great. So it was awesome. I definitely wouldn't trade it for anything.
Of course, how has your volunteer grad assistant at FIT helped you into where you are now as a college coach?
Yeah, that was another thing that like it wasn't planned, right? Because that last year of having ACL, again, I was hoping to be able to have the opportunity to play professionally, but knowing that I wanted to go into coaching long term, it was like a kickstart into being able to see what life's like in the office for coaches, right? do you think college coaching that you're just, coaching 24/7, but then you realize that 90% of the job is sitting at a desk in the office. So it was a big learning lesson there on like what really goes behind, the profession itself. So again, it wasn't necessarily planned, but with the third knee surgery, it was kind of the most natural way to transition into the coaching side. But it was awesome. It was I was very opportunistic, and my coaches were amazing for being able to give me the opportunity to learn that way.
What was it like coming into the ACC and obviously being a volunteer assistant for Miami?
That was the biggest learning curve I've had the first 6 months there, because I went from playing at a small Division II school, playing professionally, where we had decent resources, but not like Power 5 American football kind of resources, right? So my first 6 months at the University of Miami was just learning all the tools and the technology that we had and how to utilize it, and like how to turn it around to be able to help the players. So it was super eye-opening from that standpoint, like just how much goes in behind it, right? Because I was, working in the office at Florida Tech. And again, the resources aren't quite the same. So I learned a lot there, and then took another big step at Miami, just, like the player loads and how you manage that, and the video resources that we have. But it's awesome. It's awesome how far the sport has come on the technological side and how much it's helping the players day in and day out. So I think those first 6 months, that was what it looked like. And then after that, once I learned like how to be able to use that to our best advantage, it was a lot of fun being able to use the technology to help to watch the girls get better and better day after day because of it. So yeah, that was the biggest thing, was just the resources and advancements there.
How has, of course, your time at Miami helped you into where you are now as the assistant coach at SMU?
Yeah, so I think I need to give full credit to Sarah Barnes, the head coach at Miami. She's been my greatest mentor, and without her, I don't think I would be where I am. So she's, I mean, to this day, like I give her calls all the time and we chat through things, but she gave me the biggest jump start. Just like what it means to be a leader for, 18 to 22-year-old woman. Just like, trying to get to class, trying to get to practice. She is the ultimate leader though, and just how she holds herself, and how she is able to guide these like young student athletes. That was awesome to be able to learn from, and I'm hoping to be able to like follow in her footsteps in that regard.
What was it like coming to SMU and joining the coaching staff, and what were some of your accomplishments?
Yeah, it was really a smooth transition. The only hiccup I would say was COVID. I took the position February of 2020, and literally 3 weeks later, COVID hit. So, you're moving halfway across the country, to a new city, to a new environment, new team. And then all of a sudden, like a global pandemic, right? So that was probably the toughest part, was being able to coach through like scenarios that you've never had to, right? Between like 6 feet apart, and different quarantine rules, and like different practice rules. So that was the hardest adjustment. But again, Chris Petroselli here, he's one of a kind. He is another mentor that like is absolutely priceless, right? I mean, if I know something, he knows 100 things. So it's been awesome to be able to learn from him. And him and Sarah Barnes are the same but opposite. So it's been fun to be able to combine what Sarah's taught me, what Chris has taught me, and to be able to like find my own way through it. And be able, again, just to like turn it around to be able to provide our student athletes with like the best resources that they can have.
What are some of the things that you plan to accomplish in this upcoming year with SMU?
So we're coming off of one of our most successful seasons in quite a while. So we went to the second round of the NCAA tournament, ultimately losing to FSU, who went on to win the national championship. But in all regards, we found it to be a pretty successful season. So we're looking just to capitalize off of that. We don't have a whole ton of turnover on the team. Some young players that got some experience. We have a great leadership group on this team that we're hoping to be able to take into next season. So I think the looking into next year, we're hoping just to build on this year. And I think that's hopefully translating to more wins, right? A deeper run into the tournament, and hopefully a conference championship along the way too.
Of course, how has your experience obviously going to the semifinals helped you into now obviously preparing for this upcoming season?
Yes, I think the biggest part was experience. We had some players that didn't get to play their COVID year. We had some freshmen that, again, they're freshmen, right? So we had two classes that hadn't really had college playing experience. So for them to be able to play in the semifinal of the conference tournament, I think it was just a big experience builder for them. And we're able to grow off of that going into next season. So now both our freshmen and sophomores have a year of experience under them. They have some confidence. They've grown a ton this season, which was a lot of fun to watch. Just from the first game to the last game, taking players on, taking shots, building the ball, the fields, things that they weren't doing the first game. They've really been able to grow through those. So we're hoping to have a strong spring, keep growing, and then hopefully that translates again to wins this upcoming season. But I do think that was the biggest part of the tournament, was just getting these young kids some experience.
What does a typical game day look like as assistant coach, and what are some of the game day traditions at SMU?
So the fun part about what we're doing right now is we have a new stadium being built. So I think our game day traditions are about to change a little bit. But we currently are in a building right next to our stadium. But our new stadium is going to house a locker room, our team meeting room. So all of our game day operations, I think, are going to be moving over to the actual stadium itself, which will be a lot of fun, and it'll give a better experience for our student athletes. But we have a fun tradition of going over to our local market down the street. So that way our student athletes get to pick whatever they want to eat. So like this market's awesome, right? It has anything you can imagine. So they get to each have their own like pregame meal. Everybody has their own superstitions in regards to that. We even have one student athlete that every single pregame she buys herself a dragon fruit, of all things. Like not an apple, not an orange, but she has a dragon fruit, So so we have like a big team meal at the market. And then we'll come back. And I know that our girls have their own party in the locker room prior to the game. But as a coach, it's not too much, right? Like you do all the hard work at practice and then in the office every other day. And for us, aside from the nerves, game day is about the players performing and being able to use what they learned all week at practice. So we try to sit back and let them do that, make little adjustments here and there. But game day is really about them.
Of course, on game day, what is it like as the assistant coach, obviously coaching them after obviously your playing career came to a short end? What was it like obviously getting into college coaching on the sideline?
It's much more nerve-wracking being a coach than it is a player. Like as a player, I'd step on the field and it was easy, right? But as a coach, I try not to show it, but I get so nervous, not because I don't think they're going to do well, but because I want them to do well so badly, right? Because I know how talented they are, and I want them to be able to perform to the best of their abilities every single game. So like, I get nervous just because I want to see that for them, but not in the team. The team, again, I think is in such a great spot. And I think it's all a credit to the student athletes we have on the team and the quality of people they are. So it's a lot of fun. The energy's high. Our bench does a great job of staying involved. So for us on the sidelines, it's just a little bit of adjustments here and there. The only other hard part is like, how it is in the emotion of the game. And being 18, 19 years old, sometimes it's tough. So just making sure those athletes stay locked in and doing what we can to be able to support them, to help them focus on the bigger picture, not about the little mistakes or what might happen with the ebbs and the flows of the games. At some point, someone's mad at the referee at all points of the game, right? But trying to ignore those factors and just be able to help our athletes to perform the best that they can. So that's kind of what it comes into us. But it is nice having had like a interesting playing career myself and having the highs and the lows of it. I'm able to like use those experiences now to turn around and help our student athletes, right? Like I feel like I've kind of been there, done that a lot of times with the injuries that I've had. So having that experience again wasn't fun at the time, but now being a coach, it's awesome. It's really priceless.
Who are some of the teams that you play in your conference?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a conference shift coming up in the next couple of years, but as of right now, we have University of Central Florida, University of South Florida, Memphis, Temple, ECU in North Carolina, Tulsa, Houston. Sure, I'm missing someone. I know that outside of soccer, there are other teams in the conference. And I think not Tulsa, Tulane's in our conference, but they don't have a women's soccer team. So I think there's 3 or 4 other schools, but they just don't have women's soccer, so we don't naturally play them.
Of course, what is it like playing teams like Tulsa?
Yeah, it's fun because every single coach in our conference, they're all great people. So you get to know them off the field on the recruiting trail. But it's also an extremely talented women's soccer conference. So every game's tough. You can't walk into any game thinking that you're going to win. There's upsets everywhere. So you really never know what you're going to get. Again, these aren't professional athletes. They're college athletes. So they have classes they're dealing with. They have, friendships and everything else they're dealing with. So, you're not seeing a ton of consistency from them. So again, any game in this conference, you could win, you could lose. So that's what the fun part about it. Again, it's so competitive. Every single coach in the conference, they do a great job with their own programs. So again, it's fun because they're all great people. But you definitely can never feel comfortable. You never know what's going to happen.
Of course, what is it like coming to North Carolina and coaching against the North Carolina school and ECU?
Yeah, that one, they actually have great facilities out there. So that going over there this year was my first time. And we're pulling up, and it's such a fun little college town, and the facilities are great. The atmosphere was great. It was actually chilly too. So I did not expect that. I think I had 3 coats on, but a great environment over there. And again, they do a great job with their team. So again, just a lot of fun. A lot of respect inside the conference for every team we play against.
What does the recruitment process look like for prospective student athletes looking to play college women's soccer?
Every school is a little different. But for us, like we put a big emphasis on character. Not only do we want a talented soccer player who performs in the classroom, but we genuinely value good human beings. So we take that very seriously. So we get to know our recruits very well. So even if they do check other boxes, but they're not quite in with the team culture, we feel comfortable passing on that just because we value our team culture so dearly that we don't want to bring in the wrong person, right? So that's really important for us. And SMU being a academically driven school, the classroom's a big piece too, right? Because you don't want to set a student athlete up for failure just because the school might be a little bit too rigorous for them. So there's multiple components to it. But lastly, we're a possession-oriented style of play. So we do value players who know the game, who are good on the ball, and have a good foundation from the knowledge of the game.
Of course, what are some of the things that you look at in recruits when you're out on visits going to schools?
Yes. We kind of have a joke around here that we obviously watch their performance on the field, but we watch a lot of how they act off the field. So, once the game's over, are they throwing their backpack at their mom and being like, hey, carry this, or are they the one taking responsibility for carrying their own things and making sure that they have their cleats and they didn't leave anything on the bench and making sure the bench is left clean. So that's kind of our joke that we watch everything. It's not just the soccer, but we watch all the characteristics around the field too.
Of course, what does a typical visit look like at SMU for prospective student athletes?
We try our best to give all potential recruits like a day in the life of an athlete. So, what resources will you be using between our academic advisor, our athletic trainers, like where are those located, like where the dorms are, what the dorms look like, where the food is, right? Everyone wants to know where the food is. So where the dining halls are, where the shops around campus are. So we just want them to like feel what it would be like if they were a student at SMU on the soccer team, like what is it going to be day in and day out for them. So I think that's the best way to let them get a feel for it. And it's a big decision for all recruits, right? Like where they want to go to college and play for 4 years. Probably the biggest decision of most of their lives at this point. So I think it's important for them to get the full picture so they can make the best decision for themselves.
Of course, as assistant coach, was it like obviously seeing those recruits put on that SMU jersey after obviously seeing yourself put on it when you were in college?
Yeah, it's the most exciting thing because you get to know them, you get to know their families, you're excited for them, right? You invest so much into these student athletes that like their successes, like you're so excited for it. So we actually have 5 incoming freshmen that just moved onto campus this week. And it is awesome going through the process, and we're actually going through jerseys numbers as we speak. And they're excited, and like again, it's just all their hard work coming through, and like they, most of them have like played their whole lives wanting to play college soccer, and now they're here. So it's so exciting, and it's awesome to be a part of it and to be able to like guide them and nurture them and be able to like be support for them through this journey.
What advice would you give prospective student athletes that are in high school looking to play college soccer?
That's a really good question. And it's a loaded question, right? But I think that if you're someone that wants to play college soccer, there's a school out there for you. Depending on the level, like, but there's so many different options, between Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, NAIA, JUCO. Like there's so many schools out there. So if you want to play soccer, there's for sure a school, but do your research, right? It just takes some effort on the front end. Not always is like the coach for your perfect school going to walk up to you and be like, hey, I want you. Sometimes it takes a little effort from the student athlete to be able to like look at the majors offered by the school, the location, how far it is from home, the style of play, all of the different things, right? But there's, again, so many universities at different levels that just don't give up on the dream. Even if it's not coming as quickly as you think that it should be, just keep looking, keep researching. There's definitely a school out there for you.
What advice would you give those college soccer players that are looking to play in the NWSL or go overseas and play internationally?
I would tell anybody that if you're like on the border of it or kind of going back and forth, that like everybody, if you have the opportunity to play, should do it at least once, at least give it one season. And that way, like you feel it, you did it again, like you worked your whole entire life to be a successful soccer player. And to come short like by one season, to be able to feel like what it would be to be professional, to be in the crowd, to be playing for something a little bit bigger and even a paycheck, right? Might as well do it once. Like even if you're on the border and you're like, hey, like, what do we do? Because I think ultimately the hardest part for women soccer players at that stage is most of them are leaving college with a great degree, probably tons of job offers with probably very nice salaries. So that's the decision. Do you go straight to that, or do you take time to play professionally, which might not pay as well? But again, my biggest advice would be do it at least one season. And after that, if you reevaluate, you're going to fall back on your career, do it, but your career will always be there. Soccer isn't always there.
What advice would you give those future college coaches looking to get started in coaching college women's soccer?
Yeah, it's a hard industry to break into. You kind of have to do the dirty work for a couple years, learn as much as you can. I think a lot of people know the sport and they think that's going to be enough. But at this level, it takes so much more, right? Again, we're only on the field 5% of the time. The rest of our jobs in the office, doing the stuff that like you didn't even know involved in the job, right? So I would say just you have to grind for a couple of years, keep working your way up, but never forget like it's about the student athletes. I think sometimes we lose sight on that. But as long as your student athletes are growing, developing, that's going to turn into wins in the long run. So just don't lose sight of that. And again, don't be afraid to do the dirty work.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with SMU soccer program at?
Yeah, so we are on the program's on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I believe it's SMU Soccer W. And I'm on mostly just Instagram, but it's Aubs AUBS_18.
Thank you again, Coach Aubri Wilson, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with SMU as the assistant soccer coach.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Aubri, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.